Happy Friday morning, everybody. Welcome into Morning JOX, the final edition here of the week on Valentine's Eve, if that's a thing. But we appreciate you joining us here each and every day, making us a part of your morning right here on JOX. Conrad Van Order and John Saber here with you for the next hour. So Damien will be back on Monday. But again, appreciate you tuning us in here as we have a great weekend of SEC hoops to get you excited for, get you set up for, as we're hitting the crunch time now. And if you have been keeping up with bracketology, which we'll kind of recap and give you the latest on that as well. But this is the time where you can have some very impressive wins that help boost your resume, but you can also play some teams. And some losses here can be pretty detrimental. So we know a big weekend coming up for both Alabama and Auburn. We'll dive into all of that. But we start in the world of college football because that is the big story going on right now. If you were following along and listening to JOX yesterday, we had a lot of coverage for you of the Trinidad Chambliss hearing that was going on in a courthouse in Mississippi yesterday. And so this was all about him getting an extra year of eligibility. And it had to go back to his time. If you remember, he was the quarterback at Ferris State before going to Ole Miss. And essentially the entire, the deliberation was he claimed that he had redshirt his freshman year at Ferris State, and it was a medical, and there were medical reasons for it because he had chronic tonsillitis, and it prevented him from, getting in good enough game shape to be able to go out there and play. So he redshirted. And apparently some of the details, some of the documents were not sufficient for the NCAA. And so we ended up in court where a medical expert was brought in to kind of question Trinidad Chambliss and go over his situation. You had his attorney, Tom Mars, in there doing his thing, as we know, very popular in the world of sports law. And then, of course, you had the NCAA trying to poke holes in the entire thing. So all in all, it took about 5.5 hours in a courtroom yesterday before Judge Robert Whitwell ruled that Trinidad Chambliss clearly met the criteria to receive a medical redshirt for his 6th season of college football. So without a doubt, this is massive news in the SEC, massive news for Ole Miss, and we'll talk about it in just a minute because I've put together a little list here, but I don't think anybody's going to deny that he's one of the probably 2 best quarterbacks in the SEC coming back next year. I think a lot of people would argue that he might be actually the best that is coming back. So a very happy day there for Ole Miss fans yesterday. Today, we will have a similar hearing or a similar situation with Joey Aguilar. So his isn't a medical. His is having to do with his time in JUCO ball and kind of like probably going to be very similar to the Diego Pavia situation a year ago, which he ultimately got to play. As we all know, now Trinidad Chambliss gets his 6 year of eligibility, so we'll see if Joey Aguilar is able to do the same. But I don't think this was a massive surprise to anybody following along that this was probably the way that it was going to go. And, there were some, good pulls on both sides if you were paying attention to the hearing, right? I think maybe one of the stronger things that they pointed out was they found the team photo from Ferris State, his 2nd year at Ferris State, where he was listed as a redshirt freshman. And then they get into the whole, okay, well, your coach at Ferris State told you were going to be redshirted. You trusted that they were going to go through and file the proper paperwork to get that applied to you. And essentially, it's, well, you were the kid. You didn't know what was going on. It's not your fault if something didn't get taken care of there. And ultimately, the judge rules in Chambliss's favor, and he will be the Ole Miss quarterback this upcoming year. John, was that a surprise to you last night finding out that Chambliss will be coming back for another year?
Ultimately, no. The arguments as to why this was going to happen, okay, I get the reasoning behind it. I'm not surprised that the judge went for that, but seeing as how they at least were able to present an argument as to, hey, like this is the reason why, and given how previous people like Diego and like some others had been given that eligibility as well, yeah, I'm not surprised that Trinidad was given that. But the question is now, like, is this the end? Like, is it done from here? Because I know it's a fairly different situation, but a judge in Alabama allowed Bediako to be eligible and play, and what, a week or two later, all of a sudden, oh no, never mind. Actually, no, it's not. And so a judge in the state of Mississippi allowed Trinidad to play one more year. So I'm not saying that this judge was a booster like the what's his name for the Alabama that allowed him in.
Oh, he's an alumni, and there's pictures of him wearing gold mask gear.
Correct,
so,
right,
yeah,
right. I mean, again, like okay, like that. This isn't fully that surprising, but also it's February now. At the time, it was February 12th. Now the 13th. We're a good 6 months away.
Yeah,
and even still, that I'm pretty sure that it will see the courtroom at least one more time. So that's honestly, I do think he should be allowed. I do think 6 years feels like a bit too much, but also if you're going to let others play
correct.
in like you have Diego, like other ones, like okay, you know what? Yeah, like it's dumb that we let others do it and not him. So yeah, I'm okay with that.
Well, and that was kind of my thought is, we talked about how the Bediako thing, right? The judge probably didn't want to set a precedent with that ruling. And that was
Most
probably
likely,
a large
yeah.
part of why he got denied his eligibility. Well, the precedent's already been set in the one with Trinidad, right? Because you go back to Pavia and there's been other cases, right? But I think it'd be a tough sell to go, well, this was okay a year ago, and now we're going to deny you for a very similar reason. And especially this one, right? At least, you could make the argument of, okay, well, I mean, how many guys do you know that it's crazy, but you're like, oh, this guy's on his 8th year of college football because, he's just had really bad injury luck, and he's had, 3 different season-ending surgeries and all these different medical waivers. And I mean, I know he didn't, I guess he didn't break his leg or anything like that. It was tonsillitis, and I know part of the argument was, well, you could have had a tonsillectomy earlier than he did, but clearly there's medical reasoning for why he was unable to perform, and I agree with you. I mean, I think he should have been allowed to play, and that is ultimately the way that it went. And I also think there's probably a reason that they chose a courtroom in a Mississippi town 20 minutes away from Oxford with a population of 137 people. I'm just going to assume that maybe Tom Mars and his guys maybe did a little research on where they wanted to file this thing.
And with that, I'd like to think, because attorneys tend to be rather intellectual people, have they reached out to his coach at Fair State to make sure that their stories corroborate? Because they're going to look oh so foolish if this gets appealed or this goes to, if not federal, goes somewhere else, and then they bring in that coach who's like, oh yeah, here's the paperwork, or even if the NCAA, someone produces the paperwork, like, yeah, he signed it, yeah, here it is, right here, and then at that point, the judge has no chance but to completely throw this out. So I'm not saying I think it's absolutely a lie. It just feels like, oh yeah, the coach didn't do the coach, in which it feels easy to blame the coach because coach said, okay, fine, but like, did you ask to make sure?
Yeah,
I'm sure you didn't ask at the time. I'm fully understandable that, okay, yeah,
you
coach
just
said
trust
I'm
they're
not
going
to.
to get
Okay,
it done.
I believe it. Yeah, cool, fine. It honestly, something like that happened to me when I was my first 2 years in college. You all know I was at Emory, but I was in the band at Georgia Tech. I was filling out all the paperwork and everything else, and the first year, apparently something didn't go through, and the admin people at Tech were trying to call me, but I never got all that, so okay, I'm over that and moved on, whatever. But for the second year, I went back to get that paperwork done properly, and my instructor was like, "Don't worry, we'll get that done." I handed it to him. I just assumed like, oh, okay, cool. Like, he said he'll get done. I have no worry about it. It never went through. So it's like, at what point, like, yeah, was it on me to go back and double check and make sure it was done? Probably, but also,
why wouldn't you believe that they would have taken care of it?
Right. So I'm going to side with Chambliss right here. However, I also know that, hey man, if this better hold up, because not only could easily fall apart, but you could also ruin it for a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So Ole Miss, they released a statement last night about the ruling, and I'll read it to you real quick. It says, quote, "We're excited for Trinidad and grateful to Judge Whitwell for making the right decision today. We appreciate the thoughtful consideration given to this matter and for the court's recognition of the circumstances surrounding Trinidad's case. We believe this outcome affirms what we have maintained throughout the process, that Trinidad deserves the opportunity to compete and complete his collegiate career on the field. Trinidad has demonstrated tremendous perseverance, character, and commitment to his teammates, this university, and college football. We remain fully supportive of him and his legal team, who have worked diligently to ensure his eligibility was fairly evaluated. Ole Miss Athletics will continue to advocate for our student athletes and support them in pursuing every opportunity afforded to them under the rules and the law. End of quote. So there you have it. Ole Miss fans can celebrate today as you are getting Trinidad Chambliss for another year. It was pretty comical, though, that I guess while they were waiting on a ruling, you have pictures and videos of him signing autographs in the courtroom, signing footballs. Again, in a courtroom 20 miles away from Oxford.
Which also a few years ago would have been a whole nother thing. Right, yeah. My, how things change over the years.
Well, it's football. And especially after making the college football playoff and what they did this year. Yeah. But Trinidad Chambliss, he gets his 6 year of eligibility. So what does that mean for Ole Miss? And what does it mean for how we view the quarterbacks in the SEC? So I kind of want to go through, and I'd love to get your thoughts as well throughout the show. 205-834-9450 on a courtesy GMC text line. Where does Trinidad rank for you among SEC quarterbacks in 2026? Is he at the top? Is he maybe somewhere, 2, 3, 4? Or are you, you think he was maybe a one-hit wonder and that him coming back will – he won't be able to replicate the success of this past year. Again, we'd love to hear from you, 205-834-9450. We'll get to those throughout the show. But Auburn continuing to dominate recruiting in the state of Alabama. We'll tell you more next on JOX. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here on your Friday morning. Conrad and John with you until 7 o'clock when we will hand you over to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. So the big news, if you're just now joining us, Trinidad Chambliss is granted a 6-year of eligibility. He will return as the quarterback for the Ole Miss Rebels this fall. But continuing on with the college football news, I know, look, it's early and these kinds of things can change at the drop of a pen, as we all know. But still worth mentioning because Auburn got some huge news yesterday regarding their 2027 recruiting class. I know it just feels like we got done with 2026. Now we're on to 2027. But if you remember, under Hugh Freeze, right, the last few years, Auburn had done a really, really good job. And especially going back, was that 3 years ago now, I guess? He did a really good job of recruiting in-state kids, right? And for a long time, it was, being honest, right? Alabama kind of dominated in that front in a number of ways. And then Auburn came in and they did a great job to kind of flip that narrative, especially with Kalen DeBoer kind of getting there and Hugh Freeze having that thing rolling recruiting-wise. I mean, we can criticize the man all we want for, play calling and things like that, but
He was a damn good recruiter.
he knew how to put talent on that roster nonetheless. And that seems to be continuing now. Because Auburn has picked up a commitment from the number one player in the state of Alabama for the upcoming class. It is defensive lineman. He's a 4-star right now, Donovan Moore. He's out of Hueytown High School, so not far down the road here. But he picked, this is what gets you excited, right, if you're Auburn. When you find out that he commits to Auburn over Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, Ole Miss, and LSU. Now, we all know that the Texases and LSUs and Ohio States of the world particularly are known to, I guess you throw Ole Miss in that bag too now. If they want somebody, they'll certainly make sure that money's not the reason that they get turned down, right? So, and again, we know these things can change at any moment, and until they're actually signed and on campus, you never know with these kids these days. But still, very good sign for Auburn as they picked up, again, the number one player in the state of Alabama for 2027, Donovan Moore. He's 6'4", 280. Defensive lineman there. And, that's certainly a good way to go there. But, yeah, some big-time schools also there in the mix. And Vontrell King-Williams goes and gets his guy, the number one player in the state of Alabama. So, big news there for Auburn fans. I know a lot of people excited about that. I know Don is probably very giddy this morning. But that is certainly some big news there for the Auburn Tigers. But going on with the Trinidad Chambliss discussion, because I wanted to go down kind of a different road with it now that we know he's coming back, and okay, Ole Miss is probably gonna be pretty good again next year. They're probably gonna be good anyways, but now I think some people will certainly be, throwing them back in a college football playoff for the 2026 season. But I just kind of wanted to. I was trying to come up with my top 5 quarterbacks for the SEC last night because after Trinidad came back, he's certainly in the top 5, and I feel really good. I'll be honest with you. I feel really good about my first 3. I feel pretty good about number 4.
Okay.
And then number 5 is where I feel like you could go a couple different routes. And I'll tell you which way I went, and you can give me your thoughts. All right, we'll start at number 1. At number 1, I did have Trinidad Chambliss.
Okay.
I do think that what you saw him do down the stretch, and again, this is a guy that, he hasn't even played a full season technically of college football at the, in the SEC because Austin Simmons started this year and then Trinidad came in and then we started to see, oh man, this guy's really special. So I do think that with an extra year, an extra off season, he can continue to be even better than he already has been. But what he was doing in the playoff, I just so impressed by him. And I've got to have him at number 1 coming back. At number 2, I have Gunnar Stockton. I think Gunnar Stockton's another guy that I was really impressed with how he grew with his arm down the stretch. And at the end of the day, that's just a guy that, he doesn't like losing football games, right? He's going to do what it takes. He's going to get the tough yards. He's going to take the hits. He's going to make, the clutch throws. You go back to a Tennessee game this year and some of the plays that he made and that incredible throw on 4th down. And he's just a gamer. And you could argue that there's guys that are more talented. There's guys that will be higher draft picks in the NFL, but for college football, when I want to win a game on a Saturday, Gunnar Stockton would certainly be pretty high up there for me. At number 3, I went Arch Manning. I think with Arch, right, he's interesting because I think some people, you could probably make a pretty compelling argument he should be higher. you can make a compelling argument that he should also be lower. I put Arch Manning here because, again, development late in the season, and you just look at all the talent that's around him, that even if he's just taking, a somewhat significant step this offseason, he's just going to have too much talent to not make it count and not make it work in Austin this season. I think that he's going to, again, I think Texas, I am much more keen to believe that this year Texas can be the team we thought they were going to be last year. It always felt like they were kind of jumping the gun a little bit with a first-year quarterback and having to replace a lot of NFL talent, and I think Arch is going to live up to at least some reasonable hype this season. At number 4, a little bit of a caveat here because he's probably not going to be able to start the regular season because he's going to be healthy. But I think Sam Leavitt, and especially him working with Lane Kiffin in that LSU offense, I think he's going to have a really big season if he's able to get back to 100% health and stay that way over the course of it. So that one gives me a little bit of concern just because we're banking on a guy moving conferences that's coming off a season-ending injury. But this time last year, we were talking about him in the exact same way. So I'm going to give Sam Leavitt the benefit of the doubt. All right, at number 5, this is where it got tough for me. And all that I went off of is what we've seen these guys do in the past. And I think it's fair if you want to say, well, is he going to be able to do that in the SEC? I don't know. But what he's done before coming to the SEC is incredibly impressive. And in terms of being a known commodity and knowing what you're probably going to get from somebody, I put Byron Brown at number 5.
Wow,
he's an exceptional. He's an exceptional player, and if you're an Alabama fan, you've seen him play a couple of times in recent memory, and he was excellent. And I know that the American Conference is a lot different than the SEC, no doubt about that. Do I think he's going to put up absolute video game numbers like he did last year? Maybe not, but I think he can get close. I think he can be the best quarterback that's Auburn had in some time. And again, a lot of this has to go with you just kind of look around some of the other options. Like, I think Lenore Sellers has a sky-high ceiling. We all know that, but he regressed last year. I'm not super high on South Carolina going into this year. We don't know who's going to win the Alabama job. I don't know if it's going to be Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. DJ Lagway's gone, right? Like, you're going to bank on a Notre Dame transfer for Florida? I don't know. We haven't seen him play. So there's a lot of question marks, a lot of uncertainty, and I think it could go a lot of different ways, but that's the way I went. So again, my top 5 quarterbacks for the SEC entering the year. At number 1, I had Trinidad Chambliss, 2, Gunnar Stockton, 3, Arch Manning, 4, Sam Leavitt, and number 5, I put Byron Brown.
I don't really have a major issue with those. I might put Arch ahead of Gunnar, but I also feel like 1 through 3, I feel like that is the order.
And that's why I said I felt really good about the top 3.
Yeah, I feel like that's you can pick and choose your order. I think I would have Arch ahead of it, but also I'm not going to quibble that much. But I do think you're right in that 4 and 5 is you're projecting and hoping at that point.
Yeah.
But also given what you've seen from both of them, I feel like it's warranted. So yeah, no, I'm cool with that. I'll allow it.
And in terms of other guys that, for that number 5 spot, again, like, I have a lot of questions about South Carolina and Lenore Sellers. If you listen to this show for the past year, you know that myself and Damian, when he's here, we love John Mateer. And we were hyping him up, and it didn't really work out the way that they made the playoff, and all that was great, but he didn't put up the numbers that we were expecting him to put up. So I need to, again, going to have to reevaluate that one. I still think he's really talented, but, maybe he's just closer to the player we saw last year. Maybe that's just what he is going to be in the SEC. I think Marcel Reed's an interesting one because, again, you saw what he did, the first, 9 or 10 games of the season last year, and you were pretty impressed. And it's like, wow, this guy's really, really taken that next step. And then the Texas game, the Miami game, down the stretch, it was, okay, it seems like he might be a little limited in terms of what he can do in the passing game, and that's kind of holding A&M's offense back a little bit. So I think you can make an argument for any of those guys I just mentioned to be there at number 5, number 4, but, once you get past that, like, Joey Aguilar, I don't know. Like, Camario Taylor from Mississippi State, that's an interesting one. Like, he's very talented, but, we got to wait and see on that. And then, obviously, with Alabama, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be, and that'll, we haven't really seen a lot of either of them, so we have to wait and see, how that's ultimately going to work out there. But that's my top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC for the upcoming season. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts, 205-834-9450 there on the Courtesy GMC text line. Who do you think is Trinidad going to be the best quarterback coming back? Maybe you're sold on Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. Maybe you think Byron Brown is going to go and win a Heisman Trophy for Auburn this year. Whatever it may be, we would love to hear from you there on the Courtesy GMC text line. Well, we also want to remind you that flu season is here, and you can make your home healthier with Trane's Clean Effects Home Air Cleaner. It removes up to 99.9% of airborne particles, including those causing virus. It's 100 times more effective than standard air filters and 8 times more effective than HEPA room filters. So go find a dealer near you online today at Trane.com. Well, we'll roll along here on the Friday edition of Morning Jocks, Your Text. Got to preview the SEC hoop slate for this week as well. Some big games coming up for Alabama and Auburn. That's all next on Jocks. 6:33 here on your Friday. Appreciate you tuning in to Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, John Saber with you until we hand you off to Mac and Cube coming up at 7 o'clock. So if you are just now joining the show, some big news coming out last night in college football is Trinidad Chambliss. He is granted, he gets his 6 year of eligibility there in a Mississippi courtroom. And so he will return as QB1 for the Ole Miss Rebels coming up this fall. We also have Auburn. They got a commitment yesterday from the number 1 player in the state of Alabama for the 2027 class. That's Donovan Moore out of Hueytown. So that's the big news there. And we've had some of you chime in, 205-834-9450, before we get to some college hoops talk for a big weekend around the SEC. See, Fanboy chimes in. He says, Trinidad's going to have a new OC now, so I would not put him in the top 3 until I can see what that looks like. That's very fair because Charlie Weiss Jr. is going to LSU. And yeah, I totally fair. I guess I look at it as, man, and I guess this is just like the other side of that coin, right? I look at, I know he had Charlie Weiss Jr. in the playoffs, but to go through the transition from Lane Kiffin to Pete Golding and then also have to deal with all the distractions of everything that was going around with that situation and, you know, Charlie Weiss Jr. being there and then being in Baton Rouge and then being there and then being in Baton Rouge, I guess I'm just looking at, if he could deal with all that, I'm going to assume that they're going to have a play caller that can play to his strengths, but Fanboy, fair for you to point that out and to have your reservations because of that. Doug chimes in. He says, Trinidad's medical excuse is ridiculous. His original team didn't do paperwork properly. Still, many redshirts are probably really more about starting than anything else. And that was the argument, right? Was, all right, did he sit or did he, not play that year because he was actually sick, or was it because someone just beat him out for the starting job and now he's trying to get an extra year of eligibility? And that's a gray area, but I think, as we know in these types of things, right, there's been a precedent set with the Diego Pavias of the world and guys like that. And we'll see what happens with Joey Aguilar today if we get a ruling there, as we might have another situation of a quarterback in the SEC getting an extra year of eligibility. And then Alan chimes in. He says, I have no idea the truth to this statement, but I was told Chambliss was granted another year because of the fact the medical redshirt is coming from 1 year in his Division 2 year. Sorry, that was confusing the way that was worded. It says the medical records and decisions from Division II are handled by the state, not the NCAA, granting the state of Mississippi the authority to make a decision for a medical redshirt, not the NCAA, but the NCAA can appeal.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
It's too early to be thinking like that.
It is. I'm sorry. It's just the way that some of that was worded. I was trying to piece it together in my head, but it is what it is. Let's see. Doug chimes in. He says, I have to file a complaint like the listener from yesterday because y'all talk too much Alabama, and now today y'all hate Alabama because you've only talked about Ole Miss and Auburn recruiting. I know. It's funny how that works. It's almost like when something happens for one of the schools, we talk about it, and when nothing happens, we don't talk about it.
Oh, correct. Yes. We're only allowed to discuss one team per day.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We have to hit our quota.
Correct. Yeah. So you just happen to tune in on a Bash Bama day.
Yeah. So so just to clarify for everyone, it's 4 days of Alabama talk and 1 day of Auburn talk, right?
Yes.
Isn't that the breakdown that we're told from corporate to do?
4 to 1. Yes.
That was a joke, everybody. I know there's people out there like, I knew they did that. I knew it. It's like, no, it's a joke. We're kidding. We're kidding. But you know what? Based on what the stories are, that's what we're going to talk about that day. That's typically how that kind of thing goes. All right, let's get to some SEC hoops. Don, we see you on the phone lines. Hold on, we'll get to you. I know you want to talk Auburn recruiting, but we've got to get to talk about some SEC hoops this weekend real quick first because we do have some big-time games coming up tomorrow. All right, let's run through the slate real quick. At noon, you got Texas A&M and Vanderbilt. That's a big one, obviously, for Vanderbilt to continue to try to stay within striking distance potentially of Florida, but certainly getting a first-round bye for the SEC tournament. And then Texas A&M, they were 7-1 in SEC play. Now they're 7-4. So they're going to have to start getting some impressive wins to, I guess, kind of earn back some of that goodwill that we had given them about a week or two ago. At 2 o'clock, this should be a really good one. You've got Kentucky and Florida.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Top 25 matchup. Kentucky 8-3 in SEC play. Florida 9-2. So this one, major implications for the regular season title. But Florida is 11.5-point favorite at home against Kentucky. So that just kind of lets you know how great they've been playing. And Florida's been playing great basketball. as of late. There's no doubt about it. At 2:30, Georgia, Oklahoma. Okay, big one for Georgia. You need to win that one. Not going to help your resume a ton, but if you lose that game, it's certainly going to hurt you because Oklahoma is really, I mean, honestly, just pretty abysmal this year. LSU, Tennessee, that's going to be a 5 o'clock game there in Knoxville. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, the Egg Bowl of basketball at 5:30.
EBOB?
The EBOB, that's
Okay.
right. And then I feel like we've gotten really lucky this year where this hasn't happened a lot, but now it's happening tomorrow. You got both Alabama and Auburn at 7:30. So you've got Auburn at Arkansas there in Fayetteville at Bud Walton. That's going to be a 7:30 tip. You can hear it on JOX. Auburn, as we know, in a bit of a rough stretch right now. They're lost their last 3. Arkansas 8-3 in SEC play. So again, they're still trying to get that first round bye in conference play. But we saw Auburn absolutely dismantle Arkansas in Neville a couple of weeks ago. So we'll see if they can carry that on the road and have that same kind of success. Also at 7:30 on the SEC Network, though, South Carolina at Alabama. Again, this is one of those games, not a resume winner for you if you're Alabama, but it can really, really ding you if you do lose this one. So Alabama playing better basketball of late. We'll see if they can defend home court against the Gamecocks tomorrow night. And then also at 7:30, Texas and Missouri. That's a very interesting kind of bubble matchup there for the SEC in terms of this. I mean, this very well could be the winner of this game. This is a point on their resume that gets them in the tournament, and the loser is left out.
Is looking out. Yep.
So this is a massive game tomorrow night, Texas and Missouri at 7:30. So the 7:30 slate is jam-packed as far as SEC hoops are concerned for tomorrow. And as we head into the weekend, I know a lot of you probably wondering, well, what's going on with, what's the latest bracketology? Where are Alabama and Auburn right now? And I will tell you, based on what we know from one Joe Lunardi right now. So Auburn seems to be staying pretty flat when you look at different bracketologists and where they have teams. And Auburn's kind of in that 8-9 seed range right now. And, again, if they're, you pick up the pace a little bit, you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Maybe you get some revenge against an Alabama in Tuscaloosa right at the end of the regular season, right? Or you get a couple of wins in Nashville for the SEC tournament. Auburn should be okay. They just, the wheels can't absolutely fall off, but they're still in the tournament field. I think Jerry Palm has them projected not to make it because he doesn't think, I guess he doesn't find their, the rest of their stretch favorable, but everybody else seems to have Auburn still in the field there in that 8-9 seed position. And then you have Alabama, who has risen to a 4 seed a lot of places. So according to Joe Lunardi, at least, he would be the final 4 seed. And you would have Vanderbilt would be the 4 seed as well as Alabama. So you'd have 2 SEC teams there on the 4 line. You would have Florida up on the 3 line, and that would be that's it for the SEC in terms of your top 4 seeds there. But he has 11 SEC teams projected to make the bracket now. We've been kind of on that 9 number for a while of, maybe 10 if things go the right way. But 9 seemed like the safe bet. Now it seems like 10 might be the safe bet, and 11 is the maybe a little optimistic there. But that's where that Texas-Missouri game, that could have major implications for all of this, because you look at the last 4 in for Joe Lunardi, it's Texas, Missouri are both in that grouping right there. So, again, a pretty big game coming up in SEC play. But Alabama and Auburn just need to control what you can control, win the games that are in front of you, and, maybe you get a nice kind of statement win along the way as well, and that'll really, really help you out. So, we appreciate you all chiming in on the text line. Like this one just caught me off guard. It says, this person texting, they say, I was really looking forward to hearing Damian lose his mind over Trinidad Chambliss ruling today. I can't wait for Monday.
Why would he lose his mind?
Well, we'll see if he's still an Ole Miss fan.
Yeah, correct. Well, I will commend him because he was supposed to be for last season only, and that ended for them mid-January, and he's stuck to it.
Well, yeah, they almost won a national championship, or made it to a national championship.
Correct,
I think that helped.
Now, I fully expected him to just revert back to just being a Heupel disciple and a couple of other teams, but he stuck with Ole Miss through so far the offseason. So
he has.
Well, I'll give him credit for that.
Well, it was funny because before he left yesterday, I like to report facts, and
okay.
I asked him, I said, how, are you excited about the Trinidad thing? And what do you think about the Joey Aguilar situation that's going to go down tomorrow? And he insinuated to me that if Trinidad Chambliss had not won his case, but Joey Aguilar had won his, we might have a flip-flop situation on our hands.
Okay.
I just,
Which I'd like to point out, as I did about 30, 35 minutes or so ago, that there's a lot of time between this court case and the start of the season.
got about 6.5 months.
Yeah.
It's a really, really, really long time there. Yeah, no doubt about it. But you can continue to chime in with your thoughts, 205-834-9450. You want to talk Trinidad Chambliss. You want to talk Auburn, their big recruiting get last night. You want to talk SEC hoops this weekend. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. 205-834-9450 as we roll along here on a Friday of Morning Jocks. 6:48, final few moments of the week here on Morning Jocks. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we will send you off into your weekend right here on Jocks. So keep it locked from 7 to 10 for McElroy and Kublik in the morning, 10 to 2, three-man front, and then 2 to 6, of course, the Paul Feinbaum Show, and we'll have the Auburn basketball game for you tomorrow night at 7:30 as well, as they will be taking on Arkansas there in Fayetteville. But we do have a big basketball game coming up here in the city of Birmingham this weekend. Want to remind you to get out this Sunday, February the 15th, to the Bartow Classic at Bartow Arena, as UAB is going to be hosting Tulane, and tickets are available for you right now at uabsports.com. So it's UAB and Tulane this Sunday, February 15th, 1 o'clock tip, and you can go online right now, get 2 tickets and 2 $10 concession vouchers for a total of $45, and $2 from every ticket sold will go to the Gene Bartow Fund for Cancer Research. So get out there, cheer on the Blazers as they are playing their best basketball of the season right now and need a big win over Tulane. So get out there this Sunday, 1 o'clock at Bartow for the Bartow Classic, and get your tickets at uabsports.com. All right, let's go back to the phone lines and the text lines, 205-834-9450. And Don, he's been waiting patiently. I know he's very excited about Auburn picking up Donovan Moore, the number 1 player from the state of Alabama.
Absolutely, Conrad. We're going to try to take the state back over, my friend.
It's a good start right there.
Well, not only that, we're going to probably get the number 2 kid, Carlos May from Ramsey, too.
Well, there you go. That's certainly a nice start there for Golish and his staff.
Okay, but I like the way you rated the quarterbacks, and to my fellow Auburn fans out there, if you really want to look at some Byron Brown highlights on YouTube, they show the highlights of all the South Florida games. And in Landrum, I'm sorry, Conrad, I think Byron Brown's the real deal. I really do.
He's a special player, so I think it's definitely fair to wonder how he'll translate that to the SEC. But he has a lot of talent, no doubt about it.
Okay, but my last question goes to basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I think, guys, the Auburn's in danger of missing the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if you're able to take care of your business, right? Because, I mean, you should be able to beat Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and LSU. And then if you can just beat Arkansas, Kentucky, or Alabama, I think you're good at that point. But you can't trip up and lose to an Oklahoma or an LSU that's the worst team in the conference. You can't have that.
Well, we got 7 games left, and like you just said, I think we need to win 4 of the 7 and be 9-9, and then win 1 game in the tournament, and I think we'll be fine. But here's the but. I don't think we're going to really do anything this year, because if we're in that 8-9 game, if you win, I believe in the bracketology, it's got us in Connecticut's range.
Yeah, you're playing the 1 seed.
Yeah, that means basically be a short thing. But let me give your team credit, Conrad. I mean, what happens in the second half to y'all, man? My goodness gracious, that's 2 games in a row. I think in the Auburn game you scored 59, then you had 63 a couple of nights ago. What in the world happens at halftime?
Yeah, I guess Nate Oates got on them in the locker room, and they definitely look like a different team in the second half. So appreciate you chiming in this morning, though, Don, and hope you enjoy the weekend. And we'll see for Auburn basketball. I mean, you've got opportunities to stub your toes. You've also got opportunities to really go and impress some people. And we can say what we want, and I know they're playing differently right now. It's still a team that went into Gainesville and beat the best team in the SEC. So
that's got to count for something.
And it absolutely will. And I thought somebody made an interesting comparison yesterday. Somebody kind of brought it up and said, and it's different because the NCAA tournament's such a large field, but it's almost like, in football this year, the Alabama win over Georgia is really what cemented their spot in the playoff, and that's because their hands were kind of tied as the committee, right? Because you're like, well, we've seen them beat who we think is one of the 3 best teams in the country. They made it to the conference championship game. Can we really leave them out? And I think for Auburn, it could be the same thing of, are we really going to leave out the best team or the team that beat the best team in the SEC in their arena, the defending national champions? Like, I think that's a great thing for Auburn to have on their resume.
I'll definitely give credit to the selection committee for holding true to that, because of the way they weren't prisoners of the moment and be like, well, they got shellacked by Georgia in the SEC championship game, therefore they're a bad team. Well, no, it's not just a 1 game. It's a whole season thing. And so with Auburn, yes, they've struggled and maybe not done so well lately, but if they can continue, if they can find a couple of wins here or there, they still have that win on the resume. That's got, like I said before, that's got to count for something. That Alabama win at Georgia in the regular season has to count for something.
Yeah, and I think it will. So you're that's a big part of why I think Auburn's ultimately going to be okay. But I think the reality for both Alabama and Auburn, honestly, is that it might not be as long-lived of a tournament run this year as it has been in recent years. But
I fully expect
we'll
the NCAA committee to. I think they will, assuming Bama's good enough, they will let them in the tournament. They won't keep them out because they played a.
But like maybe knock them down a seed line or two.
I think they'll, if not do that, maybe put them to where they will have an easy exit. I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, you mean put them in a tough region?
Yeah, I wouldn't. If they'll probably put them in a 5-12 matchup. If they continue about where they are now, if they win out, I mean, it'd be kind of hard to put them out of 5. I don't think they'll, like, say if they were to win out and even win the SEC basketball tournament, that's probably warranted a no worse than 3 seed. They wouldn't put them at like a 7 seed. I'm like, they're not going to do something like that, but they would make sure to where they would have the absolute toughest route.
Yeah, well, maybe so.
Punish them without punishing them.
I was about to say, because you can't really prove unless there's a paper trail of
correct,
we're gonna screw Alabama. But yeah,
to be fair, the NCAA is dumb and probably would do something like that.
That is also a fair point. All right, let's wrap it up on the courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450. Like this text from Nick says, pretty sure Trinidad being eligible now that Deuce Knight didn't plan this that was a rough sentence to put together there. Basically saying, though, that Deuce Knight didn't plan on Trinidad coming back, so he's got to be upset. I think Deuce Knight was very well aware of the situation that he was walking into.
Not unlike Dylan Raiola going up to Oregon.
Yeah, is he maybe disappointed? Sure, but I think he definitely knew. That. Let's see. It says, hope y'all referred to the Ole Miss State game as the E-Bob. Oh, we did. Saber brought it up. It's the E-Bob. And let's see. Good to hear from you this morning, John Mack, even if you're not being so nice. That is
and over the line.
That's pretty funny, though. That's pretty funny. Conrad, who's your pick of the Daytona 500? I don't know. Kyle Busch. I don't know.
All right.
Sure. I don't watch NASCAR. Sorry. All right, we're back. We're back Monday at 6. Mac and Cube, they're up next.